We don't know much about the writer of these psalms other than his name was Asaph, and he was the liturgical leader in the Temple of Jerusalem. And his name means the one God has collected. He is more blunt and honest in his words, and we don't need to know more from that or about him other than that. Welcome to Leah's Bible Babble Psalms. Here we can see a correlation between the psychology, warfare, and God's power. And the more I pause and think over what I have just read, the more I start to agree with the writer that God is horrible, in the lack of a better word, as in line 4. But it is in line 6 and 7 that I want to linger on. Brave men got robbed, and their hand has fallen asleep. No warrior could lift his hand. And your roar, God of Jacob, horses and riders will fall into dormancy. There is a psychological state of mind that calls night tremor or night fears. And that occurs when your brain is half awake and half asleep. It is the same if you are sleepwalking, for example. Your eyes are opened and you can see everything, but you can't move your body, or in this case, can't raise your hand. This occurs at the same time God is roaring. I imagine God's roar sounded like a mix between a hurricane and an earthquake. Speaking of earthquakes, in line 9c it says, the earth trembled and get quiet. There are multiple accounts of that kind of silence that occurs just after the shaking has stopped and before shock and panic sets in. God will still talk directly to humans as a normal conversation tone, but when he raises his voice, things happen. Once again, we get the scale that creates the balance. Silence and roar, awake and asleep, God and war. The end in line 13 is a statement of the ages. He strikes down the curse of the lords. He is horrible to the kings of the world. This psalm starts with the same line as my favorite psalm that I tend to return to over and over again. Shout to the Lord. As in line 2, it's read, I shout to the Lord with high voices. I shout to the Lord, may he hear me. The first 11 lines is more of an existential crisis. The Asaph has questioned God's existence just to come to the conclusion that he has to be there somewhere. Just like in the song, You Have to Be There from the musical Kristina from Duvemåla. There's a link down below in the description. And the next 9 lines are a more direct conversation to God, and almost like a motivational speech towards him. Like in, I remember when you did this and that. Like Asaph had wanted to remind God of who God was and still is. But I want to highlight the line 18 and 19. From the skies, water came flowing, the thunder was rumbling, and your arrows flew. Your thunderous wagon wheel rumbled. The shine of the lightning lighted up the world. The earth shook and trembled. In every larger mythology all around the world, there's a god or a deity in some sort of chariot and or wagon that rides over the skies when it thunders. And the lightning was some sort of arrows that was thrown down to the earth. At the same time this psalm was written down, many people still lived in tents and were more exposed to the elements. So there was no surprise if they could feel the ground shake when the thunder came around. And remember, this took place in a desert environment where rain and therefore thunder and lightning was scarce. This is story time at its finest. The psalm itself takes up 2.5 pages in the Bible, and that shows how important the psalm was and still is in some cases. It's a combined story time and history lesson. More of come now, kids, and gather round the bonfire and listen to what I have to say. I'm going to tell you a story. And Asaph does that in line 1. Listen, my people, to my teachings, hear what I have to say. I get the image of an unbending teacher with the glasses on his tip of his nose, watching over with a pointer in his hand. And admit it, we all have had teachers like that in some cases. The psalm makes us go on a journey through time, from when Moses led his people out of Egypt all the way to when David is anointed king. Line 9 and 39 describes how the Hebrew people could escape the wrath of the Egyptian Pharaoh. Most of the things that happened can be explained with modern science and belief. Like in line 14, for example. At daytime he led them with a pillar of smoke, and at night through a shining fire. The only thing I can come up with is a volcanic eruption. The only problem is that, yes, there are volcanoes in the area in modern day Iran, but we have the problem that the earth is round and not flat. So basically it leaves us with 3 options. 1, that they were closer to an existent volcano. 2, that the eruption was closer to them, and it didn't leave any trace afterwards. Or 3, God intervenes. Line 40 to 55 is about the curses that God cast upon the Egyptian people to show off his power. The interesting is that a lot of that happens can be related to a volcanic eruption, from water turning red or blood in the text. Today we know it's most likely iron reacted against oxygen. To the swarms of flies and locusts. The death of the firstborn children could be explained with some sort of plague or even a DNA defect, but that is just my opinion. 56 to 64 is about how God got offended by the people that he saved, with the offering sites and idolatry, so much so that he let the Ark of the Covenant get kidnapped. In that process also scorched young men so much that he couldn't marry. The last part of the psalm, in line 65 to 72, is when God takes his glory back by building the temple and chooses David as the leader to his people. We are getting a new glimpse of how the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem took place. We know from other Psalms that the temple was caught on fire and the altar was pulled down with crowbars and bytes. Now a new piece is in the puzzle. The dead ones was left without a burial and let nature take care of the body. This is a process called deboning, and it's actually pretty common in the time of history. But not to be able to bury your loved ones, as for the Hebrews, must have been the ultimate insult anyone could think of. Asaph wants to start over, as you can find in line 8. Don't let our forefathers' sins be our burden. He has a great point in it, and is something we can learn from even to this day. You should never be accountable for something your parents have done. Instead, Asaph asks for revenge, in the terms of letting the opponent to him to get punished by God. And when God punishes, he would have glory to his name, and because God's name and reputation would be dependent of his promises. Here we are having a new expression related to God, and that is Lord Sebaot. But to understand that, we need to nosedive into the text itself. We are getting a clue in line 2c. You that thrones on the cherubs. Now, cherubs are not the chubby toddlers with cute wings on their back. Cherubs here are angel warrior guardians. They are described as mythological creatures with wings big enough to the tip of the wings can touch, and with an animal body and human head. Statues of these creatures are found on entrances into temples and palaces, or at the other side of a throne. And it is believed that it is also made of the top of the Ark of the Covenant. It is when these cherubs are placed on the other side of a throne that one that uses the throne itself gets the title Sebaot, which means the one that sits on the cherubs. For God, the cherubs are meant that they are his servants, secondary after the archangels. I will do a separate episode only about the angels in the Bible later, but I want to point out the title itself. In Hebrew, it is translated the army of war, meaning that God is the king over what reigns, the king of heaven that reigns over both angels as deities and nature as over everything on earth, and therefore also humans. The rest of the psalm is a promise. If you do this to us, God, we will do that. Scratch my back, I scratch yours. So, thank you for watching, and I hope I will see you again soon enough. don't forget to like, share, and comment. So, as always, feel free to browse around in here. If you want to know more about my playlist for the Psalms, there's a playlist here, and you might want to take and look at my playlist for the Bible studies. I will have them here. In the description down below, you will find useful information as always, just as to my other social media account and links to things I have spoken about. And with that, I will say bye for now, and I hope I will see you again. And remember, all that I always say, if you don't know what to do, at least be kind. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I see you in the next episode. Bye!